The morning mist clung to Farmer Karl's overgrown fields, a familiar damp blanket over the land. Karl, true to his established style, was already up and about, his silver hair slightly askew beneath a well-worn straw hat. He wore his favorite blue overalls and the iconic red and white checkered shirt, a sartorial declaration that even on a farm one could not surrender entirely to mud and apathy. His companion, the sturdy chestnut horse named Barnaby, was not just livestock. He was an equine philosopher of chaos. Barnaby didn't just walk or stand. He contemplated the structural integrity of every fence post, feed bucket, and, on this particular Tuesday, the delicate balance of Karl's prize-winning pumpkin patch. "Barnaby," Karl muttered, adjusting a suspender on his overalls, "we have an important day. The annual regional farm show is tomorrow, and we are not merely attending, we are conquering." Karl's goal this year was not the standard livestock prize, but the obscure, yet prestigious, Golden Tiller Award for agricultural ingenuity. The prize was a trophy, and more importantly to Barnaby, a massive lifetime supply of premium, butter-flavored hay, a luxury only achieved through victory. Karl's entry was the automated precision potato picker, a dizzying contraption built from repurposed bicycle chains, washing machine drums, and an old bird bath. The problem? It required a perfectly timed, delicate nudge to prevent the potatoes from rocketing into the air instead of dropping into the collection basket. "Your job, Barnaby, is the nudge of necessity," Karl explained, pointing to a padded lever. "Once every 15 seconds, a light, precise bump with your nose. Do you understand? Light, precise, nudge." Barnaby responded by trying to gently nibble the lever, which was acceptable, until he realized the foam padding tasted vaguely like oats. He then took a decisive, satisfying chomp, tearing a large piece off the lever. "No, Barnaby, not a chew of necessity, a nudge," Karl shouted, flapping his hands. Over the next few hours, the training was a study in escalating failure, the nudge disaster. When Karl finally fixed the lever, he timed Barnaby with a stopwatch. Barnaby executed the nudge of necessity perfectly, once. The second time, Barnaby mistook the lever for a scratching post and delivered a thunderous bam with his full flank, launching a dozen practice potatoes over the barn roof and onto Mrs. Higgins' prized gazebo next door. Mrs. Higgins' scream was immediate and piercing. The overalls incident. To ensure Barnaby stayed in place, Karl tied his halter to a heavy water barrel. Karl then knelt down to adjust the contraption's tension. Barnaby, momentarily bored, noticed a particularly interesting thread dangling from the cuff of Karl's blue overalls. One slow, methodical tug, and the entire seam from ankle to knee unraveled, leaving Karl's leg ludicrously exposed and draped in shredded denim. The secret ingredient. That evening, sensing Barnaby's frustration, Karl decided on a motivational boost. He found a jar of expired cherry-flavored horse energy gel in the back of the barn. Just a small dollop, Karl decided. He squeezed a tiny amount onto Barnaby's feed. Barnaby, however, tipped the jar, and half the sticky neon-pink goo poured directly onto his hay. He consumed the entire mixture with alarming speed, giving Karl a look of utter, sugar-crazed bliss. The horse energy gel was, apparently, a little too energetic. Around midnight, a high-pitched manic whinny tore through the silence of the farm. Karl shot out of bed, grabbing his glasses, and almost forgetting his essential checkered shirt. He stumbled toward the barn, expecting a coyote, or perhaps a tractor theft. What he found was far, far stranger. Barnaby wasn't merely restless, he was conducting a symphony of mischief. Fueled by the cherry-flavored goo, Barnaby had managed to unlatch his stall door, not by pulling, but by meticulously working the latch with his lips and tongue. He was currently attempting to teach Karl's prize-winning rooster, Reginald, how to jump over a low stack of tires. Reginald, who despised all equine instruction, was squawking furiously while trying to hide under a wheelbarrow. "Barnaby, what in the blazes?" Karl began. Before Karl could finish, Barnaby spotted the automated precision potato picker. In his goo-induced delirium, he didn't see an invention. He saw a playground. He approached the washing machine drum, lowered his head, and gave it the most colossal, full-body kick of necessity ever witnessed. The entire machine exploded. Bicycle chains flew, the bird bath spun through the air, and the repurposed potatoes shot out like shrapnel. One potato, perfectly launched, sailed through the small, open window of the farmhouse and landed squarely in Karl's cooling mug of evening cocoa. The destruction seemed to satisfy Barnaby. He let out a loud, triumphant "Nay!" and, kicking open the back barn door, galloped out into the foggy night. Karl stood amidst the wreckage, a man defeated by a horse and a potato. "Well," he sighed, reaching up to retrieve his cocoa-soaked potato. "Now he's an uncontrolled energy horse of utter folly." The next morning, festival day, Karl was frantic. He had no horse, no invention, and a deep sense of despair. He was just about to call the sheriff when his phone rang. "Karl, it's Mrs. Jenkins from the general store," the voice crackled. "Your horse, Barnaby. He's at the town traffic circle." "Is he injured?" Karl asked, fear gripping his heart. "No, Karl," Mrs. Jenkins replied slowly. "He seems to be directing traffic, and he's wearing your prize-winning straw hat." Karl raced to the town center. Sure enough, Barnaby stood in the middle of the small, usually chaotic traffic circle. The cherry gel had worn off, replaced by an air of intense concentration. He was holding Karl's hat between his teeth, and with theatrical sweeps of his head and neck, was signaling cars to stop and go. Surprisingly, the traffic was flowing smoother than usual. A small crowd, including 2 police officers, had gathered. One officer was filming the spectacle. "He just showed up, Farmer Karl," said the officer, trying to stifle a laugh. He seemed to think the yield sign needed emphasis, so he gave it a good whack with his hoof and then started this whole show. Karl, mortified, approached cautiously. "Barnaby, you absolute menace! Get over here!" Barnaby ignored him, giving an imperious flick of his head to a surprised delivery truck driver, who promptly went the right way. Karl knew he had to appeal to Barnaby's one weakness: food. He reached into the pockets of his overalls and found the only thing left: a handful of slightly crushed, stale oat cookies he kept for emergency morale boosts. "Barnaby," Karl whispered conspiratorially, "I have the cookie of immediate compliance." Barnaby's ears immediately swiveled. He assessed the traffic flow one last time, gave the intersection a final dramatic bow, a perfect bow of respect, and then trotted straight over to Karl, forgetting the traffic, the hat, and his short-lived career in civil service. The crowd burst into applause. The officer stopped filming and started laughing. "Farmer Karl," he said, wiping his eyes, that horse is a natural." Karl managed to secure Barnaby in the trailer and rushed to the farm show, arriving minutes before the judging for the Golden Tiller. He had nothing to present but a handful of broken chains and a story about an overly ambitious horse. He found Mr. Sterling, his old rival, smugly polishing his entry, a perfectly silent, solar-powered compost aerator. "No invention this year, Karl?" Mr. Sterling asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "Lost your motivation? Or did that beast of yours eat it?" I had a slight manufacturing setback," Karl mumbled, looking down at his overalls, where the shredded seam was now highly visible. Just then, the head judge, a stout woman with an impressive hat, approached Karl. "Farmer Karl," she said, her expression stern, "we hear you have an entry for the Agricultural Ingenuity Prize." Karl was about to apologize when the police officer who had witnessed the traffic circle incident stepped forward. "Actually, ma'am," the officer interrupted, "I believe Farmer Karl is being modest. He has invented something truly innovative." He then held up his phone and played the video of Barnaby directing traffic. The head judge watched, slowly at first, then with increasing amazement. The other judges huddled around. When the video finished, the head judge tapped her clipboard. "Remarkable," she declared. "Utterly remarkable." Mr. Sterling looked horrified. "Remarkable? He's wearing a hat and waving his head. That's not agriculture." "On the contrary, Mr. Sterling," the head judge countered. "Ingenuity is about solving a crucial problem with unconventional means. What is the #1 cause of farm-to-market delay? Traffic. What did Farmer Karl's horse solve? Local traffic congestion, using an entirely organic and sustainable method. Furthermore," she added, pointing at the screen, "look at that perfect bow of respect at the end. It shows discipline." Karl stared, dumbfounded. He hadn't invented the automated precision potato picker. He had invented the equine traffic management system, ETMS. The judges conferred for a minute. Then the head judge approached Karl with a massive, gleaming trophy. "Farmer Karl," she announced, "for demonstrating the unique and highly effective utilization of biomechanical communication to enhance community transit efficiency, you and Barnaby have won the Golden Tiller Award." The crowd cheered, led by the officers. Mr. Sterling could only sputter into his solar-powered aerator. Karl, clutching the heavy golden trophy, looked at Barnaby, who was now peacefully napping, oblivious to his fame. "Barnaby," Karl whispered, his eyes twinkling under his checked shirt and silver hair. "You may be the horse of perpetual peril, but you just won us a lifetime supply of butter-flavored hay by being the most wonderfully chaotic creature on 4 legs." That evening, Karl sat on his porch, proudly wearing his shredded overalls and admiring the Golden Tiller Award. He gave Barnaby a huge stack of the premium hay. Barnaby, with a content sigh, began to eat. Then, just to remind Karl who the real boss was, he paused, picked up the actual priceless Golden Tiller trophy, and tried to chew on the handle. Karl simply smiled. "Maybe so, old friend. Maybe so."